we are fortunate, sir, that we are having you in this forum, Bharatiya Vitt Salahkar Samiti, first time. And I, on behalf of the whole executive group, advisory board, welcome you in this webinar. And we will keep on touching. And another, we have a speaker with us, CA Manoj Pahwaji. And Manoj Pahwaji is one of the executive board member of the BVSS. A little bit introduction I am just giving, because in BVSS, in executive board, we have about 70 members, and they are experts from various domains. And one of the domain becomes the FEMA. As I told you, he might be covering the scenarios that how can the FEMA affect the decision making so far as the business concern is concerned for taking the decisions. And with this, we have now Suresh Pandey also, and who is the chairman of the NIRC of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. Welcome you, Sureshji. We are privileged to have you here.
Thank you very much, sir. Rohit sir. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Webinar, and we have co-convener of the group, CS Sachin Khurana ji, Vipin ji, our general secretary, who has already given the introduction. Once again, I welcome you all on behalf of the BVSS, and I will request Kiran ji to proceed as per the agenda. Kiran ji.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So now we'll start with our first session with CA Manoj Pahwaji. But before starting the session, I would like to formally read his profile. Manoj Pahwaji is a founder of Manoj Pahwa and Associates Chartered Accountants. He has an experience of more than 19 years, and sir has expertise in handling Foreign Exchange Management Act issues, economic issues, foreign direct investments in India. He was a co-convener of study group on Foreign Currency Regulation Act of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is a guest faculty to National Institute of Financial Management run by Ministry of Finance on FEMA. CA Manoj Pahwaji is a co-author of the book titled A Professional Guide to FEMA Practice and Procedure in Q&A format, published by LexisNexis. So I invite CA Manoj Pahwaji for his session.
Thank you, Rohit ji, for providing this opportunity. And thank you, Vipin ji, and special thanks to you, Kiran ji. You have coordinated well. And I'm the first speaker of the session, I know, but in front of Subramaniam sir, I'm nothing. I remember I attended his one seminar arranged by ICICI Bank. I don't know if you might remember or not. There was a program by ICICI Bank in Shangri-La Hotel way back in January, February, and sir was one of the speaker. And I was the person who was maximum queries from sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
That was the first interaction with sir. And I'm privileged to have his number also. Now I start to share my screen. FEMA is a subject. There is the only law, I think, in India which finished into 4 pages. But when you go to buy a book on FEMA, you will get a book which will be into 2 volumes, not less than 2,500 pages. But Act is of 4 pages only. That is kind of, this is the kind of act. So my screen is, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. Visible.
Yeah. So today I'm going to cover only important FEMA provisions, not all, because each and every, as I told you, act is of 4 pages and book is of 2,500 pages. So each and every topic is separate seminar can be arranged, but I'm not going to that. Simple, important, brief provisions, and to start with, why this FEMA came in. Prior to FEMA, there was a law called FERA, which was used to be called as draconian law. It was a criminal law, and year 1999, government, of course, after 1993, when Manmohan Singh was finance minister, economy start opening up. Rupee became non-convertible to partly convertible. So then government thought of, let's liberalize the foreign currency law also. No need of this draconian law or criminal law. Let's make a civil law. So they made this FEMA, and RBI was, but there were few things government has kept in its own hand, like foreign trade policy which affect FEMA, that is with the government of India, like approvals under FEMA, that is with DIPP. Prior to that is the FIPB, now DIPP, and few regulations are with RBI. So majorly RBI give directions and regulations, but
Kiranji, voice is, you are hearing the voice?
so voice is okay.
Now
Yeah.
voice is okay. Now okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. I think there is some technical issue, so we'll be starting in some time.
Kiran?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kiran, did you get the CV I have sent you?
Yes, sir. I received.
What you do, in my case, the PowerPoint that I sent you, you
Yes,
please
sir.
put it in your screen so
Okay,
that I
sir.
will go on lecture.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. So, okay. So I think there is some technical issue with Miss CA Manoj Pawaji.
Yeah.
I just get in touch with him.
Yeah. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, Manojji,
Yeah,
please continue.
I didn't knew that line got disconnected. I was just talking, and then later on I saw that I'm not on the session.
So there is always the interference in the FERA and FEMA.
Yes. Yeah. And these networkings, though we are in the 5G age, but still
So
they always have some.
Corona doesn't spare FERA and FEMA.
Yes. So, however, talking these sections, I'm not going in detail what these sections talk about, because here we are to learn that how a profession can be benefited out of FEMA, how a profession can generate opportunities in FEMA, with, of course, professional opportunities. For that, even a basic knowledge of subject knowledge that yes, to have basic knowledge is sufficient. You don't have to be expert on the subject. I said there's always one question came in my mind. I give you an example. Like one of my friends is NRI. If he comes to India, we go for shopping. He buys some clothes for him, but I pay for that. I am paying for a non-resident on behalf of non-resident. He is buying the clothes. I am paying. Can I pay? If I go in little meaning of act, I cannot. I am doing the violation. But sir is there, Suvani sir is there. If I am wrong, he will correct me. But RBI doesn't take that little view or harsh view of any of the provision. But they say it is normal practice. And if friends or relatives come to India and the residents buy gifts for them, it's normal practice. But as such, if we go for literal meaning of the act, it is not allowed. Then law talks about this capital account and current account transactions. There is always a confusion that what is capital account transaction and what is current account transaction. So, Rohit sir, as you are subject expert in accounts and all that, if a company buy a machinery of 50 crore rupees from outside India, is it a capital account transaction or current account transaction? Because company is buying capital asset. So is it shall we treat this as capital account transaction or current account transaction? Here are 2 to 3 scenarios. One is company has paid for that machinery immediately. Then it is a current account transaction. Company has not paid immediately. It has got credit or suppliers credit, buyer credit, whatever you call it. It has got credit or loan, something like that for any period. Then it will be treated as capital account transaction. Company has paid advance, and after advance, it will get machinery. Of course, after 31st March, after close of financial year, then it will be treated as capital account transaction. Here in FEMA, current account and capital account is not what we study in accounting. Here it is linked to balance of payments. The transactions which affect balance of payments are called capital account transactions. Which doesn't affect balance of payments, it is not it is a current account transaction. Normally we say any FDI or ECB or ODI, they are termed as capital account transactions. Other than them, that normal import export transactions, import export of machinery or whatever it be, they are treated as current account transactions. Violations, compounding, etc. So, this is a sir subject. He will going to cover that. Capital penalties, etc. He is going to cover that. Though I have touched in my presentation, but I am not going to deliberate on that because it is sir is going to see in law it is written that penalty can be up to 3 times of the amount involved. And if there is no amount involved, in those cases, it is 2 lakhs, up to 2 lakhs, and 5,000 per day for each day of default thereafter. Now, one more situation. In FEMA, resident means 182 days. Yes, very good. As per Section 6 of Income Tax Act also, it was 182 days. But after the introduction of subsection 1A and subsection 6 and all that, in that section, now Indian resident, the limit for Indian citizens has come down to 120 days. But in FEMA, it is still 182 days. No change in FEMA. It is, I don't know, maybe government in future do some changes. In FEMA, the most important topics and most talked about topics are FDI, ODI, ECB, and LRS. These are the 4 most talked topics which every professional should know. FDI is, foreign direct investment. In FDI, I'm not going to touch FPI, foreign portfolio investment, or that I'm not going to touch because that involves SEBI laws and many other laws, and it will again take too much time. And you need a special session for FDI and FPI. It's a big topic. FDI again can be of few types, like you can have a subsidiary company, you can have joint venture, you can have project office, you can have liaison office, or you can come as foreign company. Like this way, you can come to India, and FDI is investment into an unlisted Indian company or a listed Indian company, provided it is more than 10%, so that comes under FDI. And especially after this corona period, in March, the dollar was going up and up. It went up to 76 or nearly 77 rupees. Now it came down again to 73 rupees. Why so? Because FDI, after this lockdown effect and FDI in India has increased manifold. I just said today only that Reliance Retail is giving stake to Amazon for 20 billion USD. So that if 20 billion is going to come in one company, of course, the rupee to dollar ratio will improve. Rupee will become stronger in comparison to dollar. So this is the most important aspect of the growth of any country. That to have a good growth, countries should promote FDI, foreign investments. And recently on 17th of April, Government of India has changed made a drastic change by a circular in FDI policy. It is not subject of RBI, it is subject of Government of India, Ministry of Commerce. They made a drastic change in FDI policy, which I think every professional knows that now the China cannot invest under automatic route. But what they did, they cannot say directly that we don't want China. Pakistan and Bangladesh they were always there in approved route. They were never under automatic route. Government of India has said any country which shares land border with India or where the beneficial owner of investment to India is situated or a citizen of such country, that's they need prior approval of government before China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. 7 neighboring countries which got affected because of this: Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, 3, Bhutan, Nepal, Myanmar, and Afghanistan. Afghanistan share only few kilometers of border with India, with not with India actually, with POK. But we treat POK as part of India only. So even Pakistan, Afghanistan, if any investment is coming from Afghanistan, it has to become through approval route only. Because Afghanistan boundary is touching to POK boundary. Other subject is ODI. ODI, good concept is always Indian party. Indian party can be a company, a partnership, LLP, anybody getting under parliament or any other which RBI has notified, which they haven't notified anybody. Registered trust society, as such they cannot do, but they can do only with the approval of prior approval of RBI only. Without that, they can do. Resident individuals also they can do. Proprietary concerns as such are not allowed, but with RBI approval they can do. And unregistered partnership firms also with RBI approval they can do overseas investment. Here comes the professional opportunity. In ODI form, there is always a requirement of a certificate by an auditor. Certificate means a professional opportunity. In FDI also, again, need to do valuation of shares, you have to do compliances. We'll cover later on. But there is also a professional opportunity. These are the limits of ODI. 400% of net worth as per last audited balance sheet. Now, there's always a question comes into my mind. Let's say if I make a new company, I made one company in April this year. First balance sheet is going to make of 31st March 2021 only. But I want to do ODI to that company. Can I do? Yes, I can do. The only thing is, here the law says that net worth should be as per last audited financial balance sheet. It doesn't say that balance sheet should be on the balance sheet on the last year of financial year. I will get the accounts audited as on 31st August. And on the basis of that balance sheet, I can make overseas investment. No issue. I can do that. This is the practical, I can do that. Then, let me take you back to this neighboring countries. There's always a question comes to my mind. In fact, a few of my professional colleagues have asked to me this question. They have formed one company in March. On 15 March, they have got this certificate of incorporation. The company got incorporated on 15 March 2020, and it was under automated route, and both the directors and investors and subscribers are Chinese. The donation was coming from China. They subscribed to the shares, but before the money would have actually come to India, lockdown started, and during the lockdown period only, this notification came in. It's a good question. Whether they have to now go for approval, or it will be treated as automated road only. In my view, sir will correct me. In my view, the amount of subscription which they have made in their MOA, they have already subscribed those shares. So up to that amount, they can be treated as under approval route, because when they subscribed, at that time it was under approval route. Up to that amount, under approval route, if they want to make more investment, maybe in the form of capital, or maybe in the form of loan, or maybe in form of some other form, then they have to go for approval. Then external commercial borrowing is again very big and very vast topic. I'm just taking it very brief, because this topic itself will take 2 hours time. Any commercial loan from outside of India, any trade credit from outside India, any supplier credit, buyer credit, or whatever name called, maybe we have unsecured loans from a holding company, whatever name called, they will be treated as external commercial borrowing. RBI instruction says that clearly said there are few money should come from eligible lender to eligible borrower, and it should be used for permitted end use only. Prior to July 2019, ECB was not permitted to repay rupee loans or for working capital purposes. But now, in July 2019, the circular, RBI has allowed that you can take ECB to repay your existing rupee term loans. You can use ECB for working capital purposes also. You can do that. So they have eased out the things. This we have discussed about at various entry points coming into India. Here again, for branch office, liaison office, you need RBI approval. So who will get that approval done? Of course, HR accountant. So now there is one frequently term which we call LRS, Leveraged Remittance Scheme. RBI says, yes, you can remit $250,000 or 250,000 USD in one financial year abroad. So if you are a family of 4 people, you can easily send $1 million under Liberation Remittance Scheme. Of course, in LRS scheme also, they have said money should can go for these purposes only. You cannot do that betting. You cannot do trading in foreign exchange in foreign markets. You cannot do that. It is the limitation. But you can easily, if you have a family of 4 people, you can send 1 million. No problem. You have to for do that, you have to file a form with your bank. You have to give them the code at the purpose for which you are sending. And we have seen in the past that a lot of people through this LRS route has bought properties out of India by sending money in to LRS route. But again, one question always comes into my mind. Like, I can buy a property outside India by sending money from LRS. Can I take home loan for not to buy that property in that country that country is giving me? No. An Indian resident or a domestic company can send money overseas, but cannot take loan without prior approval of RBI. Again, the second question related to this. Okay, I cannot take a loan overseas. Perfect. Can I buy? Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a small question, because you are discussing with this liberalized remittance scheme?
Yes, sir.
Only as a layman, if I ask you, when someone who is NRI, his status is NRI, he is coming to India because he has already investment in India, because when he was living in India, he had the investments. And now
Yes.
when he wants to bring that money from India to say USA,
Yes.
so will this scheme is applicable, or how can he bring his money from India to USA?
No, LRS is only for Indian residents. It is not for non-residents.
So now suppose he is non-resident, so how he will take his money from India to US?
He can take his money from India to US by paying taxes in India, applicable taxes in India.
No, in India it is taxes are already paid, because he is having suppose rental income or interest income. Taxes are already paid on that, but now he
So he can take up to 1 million, no issue. He can take.
in this
No.
scheme only.
But this scheme is not applicable on him. But he can always take. You have to bank may ask you to give 15 CSCB form.
Okay.
That taxes has already been paid, and he can take money. No issues.
Okay.
But LRS is available only to resident Indians, residents Indian people. It is not for everybody. Now the question which comes into our talking buying a property. Can I like in India I can buy property under construction link plan? Can I go to Dubai and buy property over there in construction link plan? No, because you by buying a property under construction link plan or by making part payments or like that, you are owning a liability overseas, which RBI doesn't allow its residents to own. If you're buying property under construction plan or in payment in parts, then you have to take prior approval of RBI under the LRS. Now, here comes the opportunity for chartered accountant. Of course, the compliance part. Not only chartered accountants, a lot of company secretaries and the other professionals, advocates are doing this. What are the compliances? FLA return, which we knew that always required to be filed by 15th of July. But this year, RBI has increased the date to 14th August. Annual performance report, form ECB form and ECB2 form. There are two forms which you need to file. Single master form, advanced reporting form, FCGPR. FCGPR when we allot the shares for the first time. FCTRS for transfer of shares from where a non-resident is involved. Form ODI for making overseas direct investment. These compliances are required to be done. And of course, for doing all these compliances, any company need help of a professional. So here comes a professional opportunity. This is the annual return. And a lot of people get confused that annual return is not required if we don't have ODI. Doesn't matter. Whether you have FDI in your company or whether you have made ODI, whatever you have made, you have to file FLA return every year with RBI. But again, a question comes, by 15 July, my accounts are not audited. How can I file unaudited financials? Not an issue. You file on the basis of provisional financials by 15 July, and later on, when your accounts get audited, file another one with audited figures.
Manoj, this is very difficult to file 2 times when the accounts are not audited. And do you think it is possible to file the unaudited data with in the FLA? This July 15th date is not practical date.
So it is. This is the date RBI has given, and in that circular they have clearly mentioned that even if your accounts are unaudited, file it, and later on when your accounts get audited, file it again. They have clearly mentioned this in this circular. It is clearly written.
Okay.
Annual performance report. Any Indian party who has made overseas investment, they have to file with the RBI through AD Banco, of course, by 31st December every year. This is on the basis of audited financials. And in APR, the statute of the company, of let's say Indian party, statute of Indian party is required to give his certificate. So here comes the professional opportunity for fellow professionals. Whether you have made WS, joint venture, whatever be, you have to file APR every year on the basis of audited financials of Indian party and overseas concern also. Then under ECB, you are required to file initially Form 83 when you are taking ECB. Then ECB2 return on a monthly basis. Till the time your ECB is there. Now here comes a situation like I have taken ECB in the form of CCD, compulsory convertible debentures. Debentures are borrowings, so I was filing ECB2 form return every month. But on a particular record date, my debentures get converted into equity. So I have to file form ECB2 up to that date only. And on that date, I will file FCGPR. Now it has become equity, and thereafter I don't need to file ECB2. Single master form, which RBI brought in 2018. I think most of us has made login for our clients. So they have made a single master form for all FCGPR, TRS, LLP1, LLP2 forms and all that. for all types of form, ESOP. They made it one single. Advanced reporting form. It is required to file within 30 days of receiving of money through AD Bank only. FCGPR is required to file within 30 days of allotment of shares. So again in FCGPR, the valuation of shares, valuation report of shares. Though in Income Tax Act under Rule 11 UA, they have said you cannot take now chartered accountant has been removed out of two types of valuation. For a new company, they have removed chartered accountant. But in RBI, still they say valuation by chartered accountant or merchant banker. So they respect valuation of chartered accountant, and chartered accountant valuation is required to file. And there is one opportunity for company secretaries also. Certificate from CS is also has to be attached with the FCGPR form that all the compliances of company law has been done. So both professionals get opportunity in FCGPR form. FCTRS, whenever shares get transferred from resident to non-resident, non-resident to resident, and FCTRS is required to be filed. Form ODI, we have already discussed that without giving ODI form to bank won't send your money outside for an overseas investment. AD Bank won't send. So ODI form need to be filed before sending money overseas. And again in ODI form, at the time of sending of money, a certificate form, auditor is there, required to be attached. That money is within the limit of that 400%. And the auditor has to clearly mention in that certificate that this was the net worth of the company on last audited balance sheet, and this is money we are sending now, and prior investments we have made this much, or prior ODI if any, so total is this much, which is still under the limit. That certificate is required to be filed along with ODI form. Consequences of non-compliance. Whatever law is there, if we don't comply it, yes, now we have to face the consequences. 3 times of penalty we already discussed, or 2 lakh rupees if not quantifiable amount, and 5,000 per day, to which contribution continues. This slide should be the favorite slide of anyone. Professional opportunities. CA or CS, besides advocates, they are allowed to represent their clients before compounding authorities, or be it RBI, or be it Directorate of Enforcement, that's ED, we call it ED. They, C and CS both are allowed to represent before ED and RBI as well. Form 83, I already told, it need to be filed report of loan agreement through authorized dealer. So who will make this loan agreement? Of course, a professional. ECB2 return every month need to be filed. Valuation of shares, again, by a chartered accountant only. ADR in GDS or ADS also, Indian company has to file reports of of course, even in those reports also, a certification from chartered accountant is required. Here comes your question, sir. That reputation of current income like rent, dividend, pension, etc. Of non-resident who do not have any account in India can be sent overseas directly with the certificate of chartered accountant in form 15CB. You have to give 15CB form. A client will file in 15CA, and then money can be remitted. No issue. Liaison
No,
officer branch of
what I was saying that I have an account in India, I have a normal account and money is lying there, and it may not be
normal account is a resident account.
what you call, I don't know. When I leave India and becomes NRI, what you will call the existing account, I don't know.
Within 6 months, you have to get it changed from resident to non-resident account, as per
Okay,
law.
suppose I got it changed from resident to NRO account, then from this money lying in this NRO account, can I take it to the
Yes,
out?
you can either take it overseas or you can get it transferred to NRE. So in both the cases, you need 15 to file 15 CACB form.
15 CACB.
Yes.
Okay.
CB is of course by chartered accountant, and CB client has to file himself.
Yes, yes.
So liaison office, branch office has to submit their annual activity reports, of course, signed by chartered accountants only. These are the, I think, time allotted to me was up to 5 only, and it is 5. I invite questions if there are any questions.
Sir, I think we'll start with the second session of Rama Subramaniam sir. And at the end, if there are questions, then we'll take the questions together.
Done.
Okay, so now we have with us a very senior faculty, K. Rama Subramaniam sir. Looking at the experience of the sir, sir is the retired general manager from Reserve Bank of India. Currently, he is providing consultancy services in FEMA matters since 2002, October 2002. Sir is appointed by RBI as additional director in banks. Sir is serving boards of various good corporates. Subramaniam sir has a very rich experience. Sir has studied the capital market monitoring system in USA, New York Institute of Capital Market. Sir is trained by Bank of England on foreign exchange matters. Sir visited Moscow and St. Petersburg, Russia for secretarial of Indo-Ruble Trade Agreement. Sir conducted project evaluation studies in Oman, UAE and Uzbekistan. Sir represented in the London Court of Arbitration and Singapore Court of Arbitration as a subject matter expert on FEMA 1999. Sir worked as professor in SPJI MR at Mumbai, Dubai and Singapore for about a decade. Presently a senior consultant to several corporate and legal firms in India and abroad. I welcome you, sir, our platform. And over to you, sir, for your presentation on compounding of offences under FEMA. Subramaniam, sir.
Yes, please. Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Manoj, Mr. Rohit, and all others associated with this study. And my dear participants, number of participants are there, including Mr. Lokesh Gupta, who has very nicely contributed through his chat in some of the views of which he had, and very rightly clarified. So I am understanding that I am addressing a very enlightened group, and I do not know what I am going to add to their existing knowledge, or am I carrying coal to Newcastle? I do not know, but still, yes, you know, in olden days, my grandfather used to say Gayatri as many times as possible. So for a student of FEMA, studying FEMA as many times is as good as this efficiency in FEMA. So particularly this compounding is a very, very interesting aspect of the FEMA, and compounding has been brought into FEMA only in 1st June 2000, whereas compounding rules were formed in 2005. So therefore, this FEMA is a product of, compounding is the product of FEMA, and it was not there either in 1947 FERA nor in 1973 FERA. It has come into being in law in 1st June 2000. However, the detailed compounding rules came into effect from 1st June 2005 by means of framing the compounding rules by the Government of India. Now, what I propose to Kiran, I would request you to put that screen, please.
Okay, sir.
Well, this session of till about an hour has been given to me, including question and answer session. So I would like to give you an overview of the compounding of the contraventions in as brief as possible, allowing all the participants to raise as many questions as possible, so that this session will be more a practical oriented session, where whatever information that I am giving, which is a background, is easily available to any reader of FEMA in both in the site of RBI as also in the site of Government of India. Now, let me commence this subject of compounding of contravention under FEMA. Of course, FEMA has been very detailed covered by Mr. Manoj. So my job has been very much simplified. Thank you, Manoj, for covering a very detailed one. FEMA is understood. So out of these two words, one is what is contravention and what is meant by compounding. These two are to be very clearly understood. A contravention means non-compliance with what? With number one,
Suno.
FEMA law itself. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The contravention means non-compliance. Number one, all the provisions of the law FEMA per se to the rules. No, this you remain here. You remain here. The second is all the regulations formed under the FEMA. The regulations are in the nature of a subordinate law because several legal experts are sitting in this participant. So the main law is the FEMA 1999. It enables passing of all kinds of subordinate law. That kind of a subordinate is one called the regulation. The regulation is, all the regulations are framed by the Reserve Bank of India, issued by the Reserve Bank of India, administered by the Reserve Bank of India. So if any non-compliance with the regulations issued by the Reserve Bank of India under FEMA, then that means it is a contravention. So that is what we mean by contravention number one. Number two, that there are rules. The Government of India is also empowered under FEMA, which is passed by the Parliament, to frame certain rules for better implementation of FEMA. Such rules are most very well commonly practiced by chartered accountants and every businessman is the current account rules. Second, the compounding rules. These are all the rules, as an example I am telling, which are formed by the Government of India. Suppose a particular user of foreign exchange is not complying with any of those rules, then he is said to have contravened the provisions of the rules issued by the Government of India from time to time. So that is also a contravention. Number three, that when a Reserve Bank of India issues a letter of approval, either for foreign direct investment or for overseas direct investment or for setting up of offices in India or setting up of offices from abroad or allowing you open a WASTO account or an OSTO account, whatever be there, there will always be an annexure indicating the terms and conditions under which this approval is given. Now, if any of the terms and conditions stated in that letter is not complied with the recipient of that permission, then he is said to have contravened the provisions of the FEMA. So therefore, contraventions, in addition to that, the Government of India issues certain press releases. These press releases are not issued under the mandatory provisions of FEMA. So whenever a press release is issued, the press release is in the nature of a guideline and which is to be supported by means of a regulation issued by the Reserve Bank of India, which always says all permitted activities are subject to the Government of India guidelines wherever it is applicable. So therefore, if a government guideline is also not fulfilled properly, then the government also may refer the case for compounding to the Reserve Bank. So therefore, the contraventions occur, to sum up, the contraventions occur when the regulation or when the FEMA law by itself is not fulfilled. Number two, if the regulations are not complied with. Number three, the rules are not complied with, nor the APDIR circulars issued by the Reserve Bank are not complied with, or any of the conditions in the letter of approval are not complied with. So there are 6 different situations where contraventions can occur. Now, Kiran, not this earlier, this any slide is there. This is number 2. Yeah, this one. Yes. See, this is now this particular slide would like to elaborate what are the powers for this process of compounding and what is meant by compounding and why compounding has been introduced only in 2000 and why it is not issued earlier. The primary purpose of introducing this provision of compounding for the information of all, in the case of non-compliance or contravention of FERA, it was a draconian law. Therefore, the enforcement directorate used to be very severe because of the provisions of FERA. And in the one of the important provisions of FEMA, I think this aspect will be very interesting to the legal participants here. There was an inclusion of a provision called mens rea. The mens rea supposes or presupposes that this is the duty of the person who is using the foreign exchange to prove that he is not guilty. So such a provision was there. So therefore, the law was very, very severe, and it was the obligation on the part of the contravenor to prove that he is not guilty. Otherwise, he is assumed to be guilty. Such an assumption of guilt has been removed from the promulgation of FEMA. So this is a very significant change. Second is that of making the offense under FEMA as a civil offense than a criminal offense. So, but what has happened? When a contravention takes place under FERA, it was possible for the Reserve Bank of India or the Government of India to give approval retrospectively. That means if a transaction has been contravened in 1983 and if it is coming for some approval in 1990, in 1990 under FERA, it is possible to give approval retrospectively from 1993. In FEMA, this aspect of retrospective approval has been taken away. So when you take away that, how to deal with these contraventions of olden era of FERA, as also contravention that will come after the introduction of this FEMA from 1st June 2000. So it is for this purpose to deal with those kind of contraventions of the past, as also in the future, there was a need to take care of this issue by means of a process of compounding. By compounding, what we mean is that a occurrence of a contravention has been regularized post facto with the necessary approval, and for the period of contravention, a kind of a penalty is imposed. That is, for the example, let us give you a specific example that one particular company in India has received foreign direct investment on, say, 1st April 2020. And till 30th June, they have not allotted the shares to the person who has invested. As per the FEMA, within 60 days from the date of receipt of the money, that they have to allot the share, and within 30 days from the date of allotment of the share, a form FCGPR is to be submitted. Now they have not submitted this. So therefore, but in September, they realize, oh, I have not got, because they want to receive additional amount, or they want to do some other foreign exchange activity. At that time, they come to know that they are not complied with the submission of Form C, FCGPR, nor the allotment of the share. So what to do? So it is therefore when they come for September, the contravention has already occurred from the date of inward remittance on 1st April, and it continues to be contravention. So therefore, the contravention is to be regularized by when you, so what the compounding envisages is, you apply for this regularization of this contravention, and the approval is given post facto. That means if they apply on 10th of September and the approval is given on 15th September, so the contravention is prevalent from 1st April 2020 to 15th September 2020. So from 15th September, that is 16th September 2020, because of the post facto approval, the transaction is allowed to be continued because it was subsequently found to be eligible for conducting foreign exchange operations under the permissible activities of FEMA. Therefore, the period of 1st April to 15th September is a period of contravention. It is that period of contravention which is being regularized by requesting that contravener to apply for a process of compounding. So this is called the compounding. Now, these powers of compounding have been delegated both to the Reserve Bank and to the Enforcement Directorate. One may wonder, when the FEMA is administered by the Reserve Bank of India, why should there be a provision for the Enforcement Directorate also to have a compounding procedure in addition to adjudication procedures? The reason is that while FEMA allows all contraventions except Section 3 of FEMA, all other contraventions can be compounded both by the Reserve Bank as well as the Enforcement Directorate. But whatever contraventions of Section 3 of Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, such contraventions can be compounded or adjudicated only by the Enforcement Directorate. So that is why two different agencies are allowed to have this compounding procedure, and whenever any contravention is bordering on the provisions of Section 3, for the sake of information or repetition, Section 3 means that, save otherwise what has been stated in FEMA, nobody can use foreign exchange for any other purpose. So in simple terms, to understand that all non-permissible activities under FEMA are covered under this and they are prohibited. For example, money laundering or compensatory payment or quoting of rupee outside India, all these things are considered to be aspects not allowed within FEMA. So they are all not covering within the provisions of FEMA. Hence, any non-observance or non-compliance with those things are dealt by investigating authority, namely the Enforcement Directorate, and consequently, they will take an action of imposing penalty either through adjudication or give an opportunity for the contravener to apply for complaint. That is why the powers have been delegated, one to the Reserve Bank for all contravention other than Section 3, and for the Enforcement Directorate including Section 3, everything has been given. So these is the two agencies, and the powers for compounding has been derived under FEMA Section 13 as well as Section 15 of the FEMA, which has been touched by Mr. Manoj in his talk. Now, after that, which are the areas compounding is possible? As I told you, wherever contraventions can take place, those areas are the areas for compounding. So as I told you earlier, there can be, as elaborately described by foreign direct investment, in the case of a foreign direct investment, there is a foreign direct investment policy which has been periodically issued by the Government of India. That policy is also a part of the RBI regulation for foreign direct investment in India. So if there is a contravention of that policy, or if the inward remittance has not been properly reported to the Reserve Bank, and here I thank Lokesh Gupta for giving that the ARF has since been discontinued, because within 60 days shares are to be issued and ARF is to be issued within 30 days. So therefore, double monitoring is not required, and this has been subsumed in the FCGPR submission. So there is no need for ARF, but FCGPR is there, FCTRS is there, FLA is there. So all these things, if anybody under foreign direct investment has contravened, or he has exceeded the sectoral cap prescribed by the Government of India in their FDI policy, or he has invested in an area which is prohibited for investment by foreign direct investment, all those cases will be brought under compounding. And in the case of foreign direct investment, in case the transaction now applied for regularization, if it conforms to the requirement of the stipulations of FEMA, then such contraventions will be post facto regularized, subject to reporting for compounding. And unless compounding is completed, the post facto regularization is not valid. It continues to be a contravention. And if the contravener does not approach the Reserve Bank of India, automatically the case will be transferred to the Enforcement Directorate for investigative procedures, and then the whole other AML, other laws will take care of those transactions. So that is about the FDI. So far as external commercial borrowing, there are 5 parameters under external commercial borrowing. One is eligible borrower, recognized lender, all-in cost, average maturity period, and end-use purposes. In all these things, of course, the reporting is there under Form 83, getting a loan registration number, and the submission of Form ECB2 monthly, and also closure or change of terms and conditions during the tenure of the external commercial borrowing. These are all issues where contraventions can occur. And if such a contravention occurs, then because there are a lot of delegation of powers to the AD so far as administration of external commercial borrowing is there, due to inadequate knowledge of the borrower or the AD, there can be contravention. So such contraventions are also allowed to be open for application of compounding, and if they are subsequently regularized by means of administrative approval from the ECB division, the compounding division will undertake the compounding eligible for compounding. The third case is the overseas direct investment. In the case of overseas direct investment, as you all know, it is a notification number FEMA 120 dated the 7th July 2004, as amended from time to time, details various categories of overseas investment, and there who are all the Indian party has been defined from 2013. Indian party includes resident individuals for investment under the LRS scheme. So all these eligible borrowers, eligible overseas investors, resident overseas investors are identified under the FEMA. It is also saying how much it can be invested abroad, in which is a relationship to the net worth of the Indian resident. So far as LRS is concerned, it is 2,50,000 for individually, But if it is a family member joined together, they can aggregate their entire limit. As far as the overseas activity is concerned, those are divided into two major categories. One is sectors other than financial services sector, and two is the financial sector services sector. If these two sectors, there are different provisions governing those things, and if they are not complied with, a contravention will arise. And secondly, there is two different routes for overseas investment. One is called the automatic route, which has been covered in detail by Mr. Manoj. The other is the approval route. Suppose that the route discipline is not followed, then immediately a contravention arises. That is also liable for compounding, as also the subsequent reporting of the progress of the overseas investment by way of annual performance report or by means of financial, that is liabilities and assets statement, annual statement. If these are not there, or there is a step down subsidiary being set up by a subsidiary abroad which has been owned by resident individuals, they are also not uh, uh, compliant with law. That is also to be compounded, provided it can be regularized. We have dealt with a number of cases for that. When question and answer comes, I will deal with that. So far as branch and license office is concerned, nowadays what happened, opening of a branch office or license office has become easier than closing of the license and branch offices, because there are so many compliances for closing down an office of any kind of overseas bank in India. Not only banks in India, but also the companies are operating in India, and there are separate provisions for offices exclusively projects outside India under the project exports category. There are general liaison office, resident representative office, the full-fledged branch, the trading branch, different types of licenses are given. They are for opening of that, there may be contravention, because this branch invariably contains a long list of terms and conditions which are very scrupulously to be followed. And many a time, those compliances go to the back burner, and suddenly they realize that the inflow or outflow is choked completely by means of the restriction placed by the Reserve Bank nowadays. So therefore, at that time, everybody rushes to the CA or to the consultant how to get over that. So we have to help them to overcome such kind of a control. There are others. For example, these are others. For example, I will give you that there is a company in India which is manufacturing certain goods. This company in India is the subsidiary of a German company. So this Indian company is producing under the same brand, the same product, and the Indian company also is exporting to all over the globe, and Indian company is also selling for the domestic market also. Now, in this case, here what has happened, that the overseas German company, to take care of the global requirement, they are taking an insurance cover for the damages of their products if any complaint comes from the buyers or customers of their product. Now, when they use, now this global policy, what has happened, it covers, if they negotiate with the global insuring agencies to have a coverage for the entire global, the premium payable on that is very economical. So those companies cover for the global one. Now, then subsequently, they recover the money from the respective subsidiaries across the globe. So Indian company is also to pay its share towards the premium. Now, this is covered, since it is an insurance of non-health general insurance of damage of the product. What does the IRDA say regarding the insurance regulation that is to be taken? And also then, if need be, there is a prior approval is required for remitting of the premium. If it is a policy which is approved by IRDA, and the policy is issued by Indian insurance company by taking reinsurance abroad, and that results in payment of foreign exchange premium to an Indian insurance company, that is allowed under automatically. However, if the policy is taken overseas by the parent company from an overseas insurer, although claims will be of the Indian company will also be settled and that will be reimbursed to the Indian company, a prior approval is required. Now, if the prior approval is not taken by the Indian company, it amounts to contravention. So therefore, so I'm just giving you just why others are included in this slide, because this is not covered under the general insurance. There is a master circular on insurance. All of the practitioners of FEMA will be aware, but this particular provision is not specifically included there. That's why I thought I will bring it to your notice. Now, after this compounding, what do they do? As I told you, if the contravention has occurred between 1st April and 15th September, then for that period, a penalty is to be imposed. Now, what is that penalty? That penalty is to be based on certain quantifiable contravention. Now, the quantifiable contravention in this case is the inward remittance which has come by way of foreign direct investment. So there the amount of contravention, the penalty is dependent on two important factors. One, the amount of contravention, and two, the duration of the contravention. These two are taken mainly for determining the quantity of penalty. Of course, for issuing compounding order, there are several other factors which are taken into account, which I will discuss in the subsequent. Here, when you come to the question of penalty, wherever the contravention can be quantified in terms of so much of dollar or so much of Indian rupees, then the penalty can go up to 3 times the amount involved in contravention. So, but in my experience, I have been dealing with compounding cases right from 2005. In my case, most of the cases, no penalty has exceeded 10% of the amount. 10% itself is very high, because compounding by the Reserve Bank is considered as a developmental function to create awareness and make easy for the users of foreign exchange, and not to identify as a source of profit either for the Reserve Bank or for the government of India. And for your sweet information, the penalty that is recovered by the Reserve Bank from the party who has applied for compounding, the penalty is transferred to government. The penalty is not a profit of the Reserve Bank. We are doing free work for the government of India as a matter of developmental role of implementation of foreign exchange to make the transition cost or the transaction cost of the usage of foreign exchange to be kept as low as possible, and to treat that the contravention which has been identified is not a criminal offense, but is only a civil offense, so that he will be allowed to continue his regular operation without any kind of embargo once this compounding process is complete. So this is that is why this penalty is there. So far as where it cannot be quantified, for example, delay in submission of return cannot be quantified by any kind of amount, because APR is same whether the investment is 1 million or 100 million or 1 billion, whatever is there. So there where it cannot be quantified, nor the quantification is disproportionately large, so a lump sum amount has been paid. And another thing, most important thing which I would like to share with you is, once you have compounded, there is a declaration in the compounding that I will abide by the order of the compounding authority. The compounding which has been done, there is no appealing provision in the Reserve Bank when the compounding is done in the Reserve. If the compounding is done at the Enforcement Directorate, there are levels of appeal in Enforcement Directorate. So far as Reserve Bank is concerned, there is no provision of appeal. You have to go only against the Reserve Bank, a civil suit. In my experience of almost 15 years, most of the cases, almost 99% of the cases filed against the Reserve Bank for imposing a penalty which they considered as disproportionate, or the penalty is not based on logical conclusion. All those cases have met with failure, and various courts of India have upheld the decision of the RBI. So therefore, before advising any client to go for a compounding with the Reserve Bank, please be careful in advising them that once we go for compounding and the compounding order is passed, there is no scope for any kind of appeal. To be prepared for that. And now for that purpose, the Reserve Bank of India has made the quantum of penalty, what should be there likely, an indicative quantum of penalty has already been put in public domain. So before you go for your compounding, you will know what should be the minimum and maximum that will be payable by way of penalty. So be informed that that it is there. Okay. So next is that this is a very interesting one. This is called the compounding process. Now, how do I know that I have contravened a particular provision? One is, it is possible that the Reserve Bank of India or the Enforcement Directorate can issue a memorandum saying that you are not complied with ABC provision, and the Reserve Bank says that you are given because compounding is voluntary, not compulsory. So you are given an option to come for compounding, and the compounding application will be examined on merit. So if you get a memo from the Reserve Bank or from the Enforcement Directorate, that is one source where you find that the company has contravened. Second, you yourself find out that when you are going for next remittance, the AD says, no, you have not done this, you have not done this properly, so you have contravened that, so you come to know about that. Or third is that your auditor, while giving some of the certificates, he finds out that you are not complied with certain things, that there are some compliance gaps. So in these situations, one comes to know the instance of non-compliance with this. Of course, at that time, if you decide that let me go and regularize this kind of a contravention, then there is a provision for submission of this. All these arrows indicate the stages of compounding process. Number one, we have to submit an application. This application form is in the prescribed form that is available in the site. Very simple form of some 8 items, and out of those items, most are statistical particulars about that applicant, and most important item is brief description of the contravention and the section under which contravention has taken place. This is the most critical part of any compounding application. So friends who are preparing applications for compounding, as also those who are appearing for compounding with the compounding authority, please be as elaborate. Although the description says brief description about the contravention, you be as elaborate as this in this particular thing, which is a tip I am giving, which will facilitate no queries will be asked by the Reserve Bank in case that particular description is self-explanatory. So it is there that one has to pay some attention on that particular. Don't withhold any information, because if you withhold any information, the compounding authority will be prejudiced that there is no full disclosure that may increase the penalty to a higher level. So the whole purpose of going to compounding with the Reserve Bank will be defeated in case we give increase. But you also may, most of the compounding authorities, if you say, sir, I want to give something more, this is a personal hearing, I have come, but you have brought to my knowledge that such and such thing is not there. So please give me an opportunity for resubmission or addendum of this particular application. Yes, they will generally allow to add this in case you are supplementing with certain additional facts. So that will involve a time interval, and in case you are not able to complete all these formalities within a maximum period of 180 days from the date of submission of compounding application, your compounding application will be returned. The return does not mean they have rejected. That means they are giving your first time limit is over, so you have to refurbish the entire information and submit it again. So that is called submission of additional information. Hearing, there is a provision for personal hearing because this is a general law, normal law of opportunities to be given or before accusing anybody of any crime or any kind of non-compliance. Opportunity should be given to hear them in compliance with that natural principle of law. Hearing opportunity is provided, but most of the time, if your compounding application has all the post facto approval or in place, the hearing is more in the nature of a formality. The hearing only will help you. Suppose your company is a loss-making one, and you are not able to recoup the losses, and your possibility of future income is also not likely. These factors, if they are not brought out in the compounding application, you make a submission that a kind of high penalty may erode the already suffering liquidity, and the company authority may take a compassionate view. Uh, they have got some discretion to take this kind of a compassionate view. So that is why for all my clients, I request them to appear before the compounding authority for a personal hearing, although that is optional. Many a time the compounding penalty may be same or may not be the same, but a kind of rapport with the Reserve Bank of India and explaining the bona fide nature of the transaction, all those things, these are opportunities for expressing to the Reserve Bank. So I would like the people to go and seek a hearing for that. And the decision on the application is taken by passing an order of compounding. This order of compounding is done within a maximum period of 6 months. And in case it is incomplete data or a post facto approval has not come, it will be returned. And generally rejections are very few. Most of that are, if it is not compoundable, then only it is rejected. That means post facto approved. Suppose this foreign investment has come for real estate business, and that real estate is not at all permitted under this compounding, under the PEMA, and hence it cannot be regularized. In such cases, the compounding authority hands are tied and they will reject. And in case all the information that is not furnished to that, and the compounding authority for one reason or the other is not in a position to take a decision within 180 days, they will return this application with a request to resubmit again for that. Or sometimes they, while scrutinizing that, if they find that there are instances of money laundering, or there are instances of compensatory payment, or there are instances of terror financing, or all those things are observed, then it will be referred to Directorate of Enforcement or Anti-Money Laundering Agencies or the CBI as the case may be. And once it is decided, the compounding fee, already there is it is in the public domain. You will see what exactly are the fees for various kinds of contraventions, and that fee is to be paid within 15 days from the date of the compounding order. And that will be done by means of a demand draft in favor of the Reserve Bank of India, payable at the center where your compounding application has been heard. So all the regional officers are also authorized to compound, particularly FDI cases. So it be in the name of Reserve Bank of India, Chennai, or Reserve Bank of India, Calcutta, or Reserve Bank of India, Bombay, as the case. If certain cases are, for example, overseas investment cases, all types of cases are centralized in Bombay Central Office. So in that case, it will be Reserve Bank of India Central. And the payment is to be made within 15 days from the compounding order. On completion of that, within next 15 days, they will issue what is known as the discharge certificate. The discharge certificate means that no other law, no other provision can lie against this particular contravention which has been identified. So it is a kind of a total immunity provided for time to come for this particular error. So this is a very much salient aspect. The last is a salient aspect of the compounding authority. one gets total immunity. It is a one-time injection, so which will last for lifetime as a immunity for that particular illness. Next slide, please. Yeah. These are, how does the Reserve Bank of India uh, deal with this particular slide? I will quickly go through that. One is, what is the track record of the application? Suppose it's a listed company having there for 4 or 5 decades, and they have got a huge foreign exchange business. This has occurred due to certain inadvertent or inadequate knowledge of the stock, or some inadvertent or some wrong advice. Then they take a view on that this company has been generally compliant, but this particular case there is a deviation. And nature of contravention. If there are cases where a company will not issue shares, earlier it was very frequent. Now, consequent to the amendment of the company law, also the delay in issuing of shares have come down very much less, and the compounding cases on delay on this also has come down very much low. Then non-disclosure, that is concealment of basic facts, that is also taken, and whether this particular contravention has resulted in any kind of money laundering or any kind of undue profit or undue gain, or resulting in loss to the national exchange of this. In such cases, very serious view will be taken. Any other relevant factors, for example, the CFO of that particular company is under investigation, or there are frauds involved, all those things also will be taken into account. As regard the penalty, I have already covered. The Suppose a contravention has occurred of delay in allotment of shares, then again within 3 years you cannot again go to the Reserve Bank for compounding of that. So my suggestion here, as a practical suggestion, is when you are going for compounding of any particular contravention, please make a very detailed due diligence of that compliance across the board in all cases, whether it is a overseas investment, or it is an FDI, or it is a ECB, or it is a branch, or it is import or export, all kinds of foreign exchange where you have dealt with $1 sending out or $1 coming in. If there is any gap, please, this is an opportunity to make a comprehensive due diligence, and whatever is observed, you include in that as a contravention in a single compounding application. That is about that. In case after 3 years, if the same contravention comes, the RBI condones that delay and take it as a fresh complaint. Yes. Yes, please. Next slide, Kiran. Yeah. Yeah, this is the compounding authority. I have already told about these two authorities. So far as the Reserve Bank of India is concerned, apart from the central office of the Reserve Bank, which exclusively deals with cases of overseas investment and certain typical capital account transactions, the foreign direct investment is completely handled by all the regional offices. The New Delhi regional office deals with branches, license office, and non-resident remittances, and all these overseas investment related are done only at overseas investment. ECBs are done only at the central office, which is known as Cell for Effective Implementation of FEMA, or shortly known as SEFA. So that deals with that. That is about this compounding authority. Next slide, please. Kiran? This is the compounding is to be, application is to be made in a prescribed format, whose specimen is already given in the slide, and you will get the slide to them. And then this it is in a prescribed format. For giving that, you have to give a DD of 5,000 rupees, named in favor, payable in favor of the Reserve Bank of India at the place where the regional office is situated. And there are certain specific information depending on the type of contravention. If it is FDI, there is a particular annexure. If it is the ECB, there is a particular annexure. If it is the ODI, there is a particular annexure. All these things are forming part of the master circular on compounding which is there. Then this company about this is there, and there are certain declaration that you are not under investigation of enforcement. If the investigation is there, the idea is what is the impact of that in case investigation is there, can I go for compounding or not? Yes, the answer is yes, you can go for compounding even though investigation is pending. Only thing is, before accepting your case for compounding, the RBI will get a no objection certificate from the enforcement director, for which they will write to the enforcement director stating that this particular company has approached us for compounding the contravention, the following contravention. If you have got anything to say about this, please inform. Now, what in the past, what happened? The enforcement director did not reply in time. So what the Reserve Bank has done now, that in that letter itself they have told that we seek your comment for considering this application, and in case you don't reply within 30 days from the date of this letter, it is presumed that you have no objection for the Reserve Bank of India doing this. So therefore, such a provision is there. Although 30 days is given, they generally issue one reminder to ED and they don't wait for the reply and they go suo moto without waiting. So these are the nuances of the dealing with compounding, which all the members should do. And then this about you have to give a specimen signature, your cancelled check you have to give, your IFSC code, your account number, that is received because in case your application is to be returned, the 5,000 rupees that you remitted towards the fee, that will be returned to you, not by means of a DD, but it will be credited by net banking. For that purpose, they want your bank details in them. So next, and this completes broadly an overview of the provisions of compounding under FAIR. Kiran?
Yes, sir.
Now the question are done.
Okay, sir. I just take the questions if there are any.
Sir, you have very well covered about the process of compounding with the RBI. And one thing, when you are referring about the real estate offenses, and you said that the compounding is not possible. Can you elaborate little bit that what is the reason or what type of offenses you are referring?
Yeah, you see, in the case of real estate business, investment in real estate, see, there is lot of grayness in the usage of the term real estate business. Real estate business is defined in the law as one where the income is derived or profit is made by way of investing in that immovable property, by way of income or or a rent or a resale. All these things are there. This requirement, this definition is there, but they are differentiating real estate business and certain, for example, construction for these what you call that new government scheme is there where low income housing is there. So there is a difference between real estate business and construction activity, infrastructure activity. So what I meant is, I will call you back. I am in webinar. So what I meant is that if that particular activity of foreign exchange business is falling within the definition of real estate business, then it is a contravention. Now, since that activity is totally prohibited under FEMA, it cannot be given post facto approval for regularization. So since it cannot be given post facto approval, the question of compounding does not arise because it continues to be a contravention of FEMA outside the compounding eligibility of this. So then it comes whether it is who is the interest of that, whether it involves a kind of money laundering or it is purely things. Those are areas which fall within the jurisdiction of anti-money laundering or this kind of terrorism funding, or in any other case, or it is a total diversion of funds drawn for purposes other than which are eligible, which Enforcement Directorate deals with it or CBI deals with. So because of that, see, another very important question that you raised, anything that which can be given as a post facto approval, only such cases can be compounded. Otherwise, compounding is not possible. So it is in that context I mentioned the real estate business.
That is okay. But one thing is coming again. You are referring for real estate business and you are differentiating it with construction business also. That is very okay, understandable. But when we are saying the real estate business, is it in India or outside India we are referring, or both ways there?
Both are. That is, there is you see, very good question. In the case of overseas investment division, that is OID, that is FEMA 120, you see, it says what is that the overseas subsidiary can undertake all activities, all kinds of business which are permitted by the local government authority. So even though that country allows real estate business to be done by way of foreign investment, India does not allow for foreign investment. So but only one thing where you can have. What about residential complex for resident individuals? There some relaxation is there. If you are a resident individual and your son is there employed there, or you want to help him construct a house, or you want to post-retirement, you want to settle down and have a house, then you can do under the liberalized remittance scheme a residential house under the liberalized.
That's not a business. Basically, that is for self-use.
Exactly, it is for residential purpose. If it is business, then you set up a subsidiary and you have a premises as an account that is permitted. Even suppose you are having a branch, abroad, you don't have a subsidiary, but the branch requires some space. Then with prior approval of the RBI, you can acquire, yes, it is permissible with the prior approval of the Reserve Bank. You can, we have taken for Patel Engineering Limited, we have taken approval from the RBI. So, this is actually, it is good that Mr. Vastani, you raised this. Real estate is a area where lot of ambiguity, lot of clarity is required. So what I have learned is, by applying by case by case only, we are able to get some understanding of it.
Thank you, sir. Kiranji, you can move.
Yes. So there is one question in the chat box: which regulation I have to follow for disinvestment under ODI scheme by way of transfer to non-resident?
Yes.
This one is correct. Master Direction Reporting under Foreign Exchange Amendment Act 1999.
You see what, yes, this question is very relevant. You see what happened, this is a very interesting aspect. Normally in Indian context, disinvestment is understood in a different way. And in that ODI, disinvestment is understood in a different way. That is because if you look at the definition of in the FEMA, the term transfer includes everything. It includes sale, it includes gift, it includes the pledge, it includes hypothecation, or it includes anything. All these things are combined in a single term called as a transfer. So when a share is transferred either from a resident to a non-resident or a non-resident to resident, either case it is. In the case of overseas direct investment, when a resident is selling his share to a non-resident, he is disinvesting from the overseas subsidiary's shareholding, and the non-resident is acquiring that share. So far as this transaction is concerned, the Indian resident shareholder will submit part 3 of Form ODI, indicating that he has disinvested this particular share, which is valued at so and so, and it is against the share purchase agreement and so, and the consideration has been received and repatriated in India through normal banking channel, and there is a e-bank realization certificate is there. If he reports all these things in the ODI portal, in the project profile, the name of the Indian party shareholders will be deleted and the non-resident shareholder's name will be included, thereby the project profile will be position. This is the position. I hope the questionnaire is clear, or he has got any supplementary, madam?
Yes, sir. Sir, one more there. Sir, there is two more question. There are.
Yes.
1 minute. If a listed private company write off its
Please be louder.
investment
I am
in
not able
foreign
to.
JV.
Kiran, you are not audible to me.
Okay, 1 minute, sir. Sir, is it okay now?
Yes.
Sir? Sir, there is one more question. If an unlisted private foreign JV or associate
If
more than 25% by mistake, more than 25% by mistake, what are available?
Yes, in that case, what happened? If he has, what happened, this 25% disinvestment is allowed only for listed companies and also up to certain amount that is allowed. This is known as a self write-off under the overseas direct investment. Now, if it exceeds 25%, then it has to come for specific approval of the RBI. Lalita, నేను ఒక పనిలో ఉన్నా నేను ఒక 10 నిమిషం దాడి పిలుచురా అయినా very bad news. So that is this particular thing that if it exceeds 25%, that is not in the case permissible. So either they have to go for approval afresh with compounding, and that should be under the approval route. So the earlier thing has to be negated. There should be a post facto approval, prior approval for disinvestment, and it will be compounded.
Sir, there is one more question. Beneficial owner of how much percentage will invite the FDI circular guidelines and require prior approval for countries sharing land border?
A beneficial owner, you see, what is then foreign direct investment is considered anything 10% or above. So same is applicable here for beneficial owner, directly or indirectly.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more question. ODI Part 3 has to be filed online or in physical copy to AD Bank. If online, then web portal.
Yes, it is in the ODI portal only. It will be there. Now, sometimes, you may find difficult in doing that. In that case, we have to route it through the AD, in which case they will do it on hard copy.
Okay, physical. Sir, whether ECB2 is to be filed in case of convertible debentures?
Yes, if it is a convertible debenture, in the case of now, all these things which are issued, have been issued as fully convertible debenture. In that case, if it is either you see, if you issue a fully convertible debenture, ab initio, then it is treated as equity and you would have filed FCGPR. If you file FCGPR, then this is not required. But if you have not filed FCGPR, but you have filed Form 83, then you are treating it as a debt. The fundamental difference is whether it is equity or debt. If it is equity, ab initio, it should be stated as a equity. For example, compulsorily convertible debenture or compulsorily convertible preference share. Then you file Form FCGPR, in which case you have to follow that discipline. Whereas if you have filed for a debenture, a Form 83, then you have to form the ECB decision.
Sir, one more last question. Can we make payment in cash in Indian rupees for payment for import from Nepal?
Pardon? Pardon?
Can we make payment in cash in Indian rupees for
Ah.
payment for import from Nepal?
No, it is, you see, the payment in Indian rupees is not possible. Although Indian currency is a currency in what you call in circulation up to 500 rupees, it is in available for circulation. Settlement in rupee is not possible. But settlement in Indian rupees through a bank account is possible.
Sir,
Not by cash.
this question is regarding import from Nepal.
Ah.
In any case, sir, more than 10,000 rupees you cannot pay in cash.
That's what I am telling you.
So if it is say import, it has to be through banking channel only. You can pay in INR if you are importing from Nepal. You don't need to pay in dollars. You can pay in INR, but it has to be through banking channel only.
INR is permissible.
Particularly for import, particularly for an import, because you have to produce a bill of entry. So unless it is sent through a banking channel, the bank will not be able to handle this bill of entry also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Subramaniam, sir, for such a nice presentation. And it is all your experience that your session was on compounding, but you can answer any question from any corner of FEMA. And thank you so much, Manoj Pawar, sir, for such a nice presentation. Now I would like to invite Sachin Khurana, CS Sachin Khurana, for the formal vote of thanks to our both present.
So before
Sachin Khurana.
Pharma Supervision, sir, I will request you to share your contact details for the benefit of members.
yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Shall I tell now? Sure.
Yes, I think you can put it in chat box so that it will be easier for you.
Okay. Kiran, you have got my contact details, no?
Yes, sir. I will share in chat box.
You
Yes,
please give that so that everybody will get.
I share in chat box.
And before I conclude, I am very happy to share with this elite audience of this session of today, which is a video conference, no doubt. But Manoj has provided the necessary foundation for me to take off, and I really enjoyed this session for the last 1 hour, and I hope we are a little better than what we were yesterday. Thank you very much for all of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sachin, please give
Yeah,
a formal vote of
thank
thanks to
you.
both our speakers.
Thank you, ma'am. With the efforts of Team BVSS are eager to learn is in perpetuity now, I guess. And so we all will be witnessing the overall transformation from the physical learning to e-mode. So for this brilliant presentation, I put all my gratitude in words and thank you our eminent speakers, Shri Manoj Pawar ji and Shri K. Subramanian ji, for sharing their knowledge and experience with us, sir. Thank you so much.
नहीं वो सब हो गया
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Manoj, thank you for remembering me in those olden days.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks everybody
Thank
who
you.
has joined today also and be part of this BVSS webinar. And we request all of you to be in part of our programs on various topics. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Kiranji,
sir.
should
Thank
we
you.
close?
Yes, sir.